It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon when the doctors gave up. The millionaire's son, only 8 years old, was lying in a sterile hospital bed, a life flickering in the balance. Every expert in the field had turned their backs, saying there was no hope. His parents were devastated, helpless. Yet in the midst of their despair, a woman stepped forward. A maid, no medical training, no background in science. Just a woman who had worked in their mansion for years, unseen and unheard. How could she, someone so ordinary, accomplish what the world's top doctors couldn't? But she did. What happened next shocked everyone. Something so miraculous it still resonates today. Stick with me. You won't believe how this story ends. The mansion on the hill stood tall against the relentless storm, its lights gleaming like stars in the darkness. Inside, the atmosphere was heavy, thick with fear and hopelessness. Inside the cold, white-walled hospital, wealthy businessmen and doctors had all gathered around the child's bed. The boy had been in a coma for 3 months. An accident had left him unrecognizable, fighting for his life. The finest doctors had tried everything, every possible treatment, every cutting-edge technology. Yet despite their efforts, his vitals showed no improvement. The family was broken. His father, a millionaire entrepreneur, had offered a fortune to anyone who could save his son. But now everyone had abandoned them. Despair hung in the air like a thick fog. Meanwhile, in the mansion's kitchen, Maria, quiet, humble, and always in the background, had spent her days cooking meals, cleaning and keeping the house in order. No one paid much attention to her. To the family, she was just the maid, a small, almost invisible presence. Yet she noticed something. Every evening, when the family was lost in their own grief, she would overhear conversations in hushed tones. There were murmurs of a miracle, whispers of a mother's love so strong it could defy the impossible. Maria had seen things, felt things. She had been born into a life of hardship, of inequality, where people like her were often disregarded and pushed aside. But that did not mean she lacked the ability to see beyond what the eyes could perceive. And so, after weeks of silence, she quietly made her way to the boy's hospital room. No one noticed her slip inside. At first it was a small gesture, a touch on his hand. She wasn't sure if it was just a feeling or something deeper. But she had a strong belief that there was something she could do. Days turned into weeks, and Maria continued to visit the boy's room, always alone, never a word spoken. She brought with her no fancy medicines or high-tech devices, just her presence. And something else, her quiet, unshakable faith. She would sit beside him, watching the rise and fall of his chest, and would whisper stories of the life he still had ahead of him. She spoke of hope, of family, of dreams not yet realized. Sometimes she would sing soft lullabies, songs from her childhood that seemed to bring warmth to the cold room. The doctors at first saw it as nothing more than an act of kindness, something insignificant. But every morning the boy's condition seemed to improve just a little more. His heart rate would stabilize, his breathing would become stronger, and his temperature would lower. The doctors didn't understand it. His parents didn't understand it. But something was changing. As days passed, the tension in the house grew. The family began to notice. The boy's mother, once despondent, began to show signs of hope. She couldn't explain it, but she was starting to believe in Maria's quiet devotion. Meanwhile, Maria continued, knowing that in a world filled with prejudice and doubt, she could never speak of the change she was creating. She was, after all, just the maid. Then the breakthrough came. It was another cold night when the boy's parents received a call that they'd been dreading. The doctors were on their way to the house to inform them that their son had only a few hours left to live. There was no more hope. It was too late. But when they arrived at the mansion, something was different. The boy, whose condition had been deteriorating for months, was sitting up in bed, wide-eyed and alert. He was breathing on his own. The machines that had once monitored his life were silent. In the room stood Maria, her hands folded in prayer. Her eyes were closed as if she had known this moment was coming. The doctors rushed forward, stammering in disbelief. "Impossible," they whispered. "This isn't possible." But there it was. The impossible had happened. The boy's parents looked at Maria, stunned, as tears filled their eyes. She said nothing. She never did. But they understood. She had done what no one else could. She had worked a miracle. In the following days, the boy's recovery was nothing short of extraordinary. Doctors who had once written him off began to question everything they knew, and yet in the midst of it all, Maria remained in the background, her humility unbroken. The months that followed were a whirlwind of recovery. The boy, once a shadow of himself, was now alive, laughing, playing, and growing stronger every day. The family, forever grateful, offered Maria a sum of money she could never have imagined. But she refused. Instead, she asked for only one thing: to continue living in their house, to be a part of their family, not as the maid, but as an equal. The Millionaire family, who had once ignored her and looked down on her, agreed. They had seen her power, her grace, and her humility. They realized they had misjudged her. In Maria, they had found something they hadn't known they were missing: faith in something greater than wealth, greater than status, and greater than power. But Maria never sought the spotlight. As the boy grew older, he always remembered her, his angel, the woman who had saved him with nothing but belief. And as for the world, it watched in awe. The story spread far and wide, captivating hearts. People began to question the systems of power and privilege that allowed people like Maria to go unnoticed. What if the key to healing, to true change, lay not in money but in the heart? In the end, Maria's legacy wasn't just about the boy's recovery. It was about the transformation of an entire family, a community and a society that had been blind to the power of love, faith, and compassion. As the story ended, one question remained: how many other Marias are out there, quietly changing the world without ever being seen? What if we could all see them for who they truly are?